These heated protests today in Baltimore, those protesting what they say police overreach and police violence and targeting of young African-American males. They say it has got to go. But this Harris County, Texas sheriff has a different view of things. Ron Hickman says that when we talk about Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. And he says this has become a smoking gun for all parties involved. And unfortunately, in his case, on Friday, he will be attending a funeral for Sheriff Deputy Darren Goforth, who was shot down at a gas station simply because he wore a badge. Sheriff, good to have you. What do you make of this ongoing protest and this debate that comes back to if you have a uniform, that alone increasingly makes you a target?
Well, I think it should concern all of us when the splinter group or an extremist group tends to elevate the rhetoric that includes the killing of any human being.
Now, this deputy sheriff who was ambushed in this case follows in the heels of similar attacks that occurred. In fact, the 3 gunmen still at large in the greater Chicago area. Similar deal, similar target, similar vitriol. What is going on, Sheriff?
Well, you can't help but wonder if there aren't people who are susceptible to the message that someone should lash out and make targets of police officers. You know, in our line of work, we're accustomed to being an elevated risk because of confrontation. No one is accustomed to being ambushed from behind in an unprovoked attack.
You said in the comments not too long ago that it's unfortunate there's not many civilian occupations that you could point to that you could be shot for the clothes you wear. In other words, do you tell your men and women, and do you think it's a good rule of advice now for those in uniform throughout the country to be extra cautious? What do you tell them to do?
I think the circumstances say that very loudly. In fact, we're seeing here in Houston when some of our men and women stop to pump gas in their patrol cars, we have citizens watching their backs. That speaks a pretty loud message.
Do you think that if these are coordinated, in other words, they're all inspired by the same sort of Black Lives Matter movement, and not that that's been remotely proven, but that it provides the gist for this, that is now getting out of hand? And how would you sort of get it back under control?
Well, I think those legitimate arms of the Black Lives Matter movement should be willing to speak out against any fringe elements that don't represent their true message.
Do you think the Black Lives Matter groups are hate groups?
I don't know enough about the specific beginnings of that group and what they intended to accomplish. I would hope that their protest movement sought to have a solid, positive outcome.
Do you think when you look at all of this going on, Sheriff, I mean, there are a number of those who stand by the victims of young African-American males more often than not who claim there is not nearly the amount of attention paid to them when they're shot and killed as there is to guys like your men and your women. What do you say to that?
Well, I think there are different issues in different parts of the country. You know, certainly in our community, we have not had that degree of unrest. And I see different trends across the country where officers have shot unarmed suspects that they're beginning to be indicted as a result of that.
Sheriff, thank you very much. I know this has to be a tough week for you, and I know on Friday with the funeral for Deputy Darren Goforth, it will get even tougher for both you and his family and his friends and his colleagues. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. That's absolutely true.
All right. I appreciate your taking the time. In the meantime, we told you about how the White House secured its 34th yay vote on this Iran deal. Now, that means that close to 2/3 of the U.S. Senate is against this thing. I say close because it is not the exact 2/3 majority you would need. Bob Casey, among those who changed his mind, had said he will vote for this deal, but for an odd reason and an odd assurance. Listen to this.
I believe this president, if they try to break out and get a nuclear weapon, would take military action. That's what undergirds the whole agreement.
I don't see that. I don't see him having appetite for that.